Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to change out the stepper board in your Dremel Idea Builder. As I work here, I'm going to kind of give you some of the steps that I went through to kind of troubleshoot this problem. The main problem I'm having is when you go to load filament, instead of doing the continuous load like the printer does, it's doing this weird like back and forth stepper motion where it's just kind of sitting there and clicking. And also when you go to print, it is spitting out filament very unevenly, where it'll print some lines and not print some of the others. Things I tried before coming to this conclusion, where I tried changing the drivers, which are these little guys that are actually on the board itself. What I did was I rotated all of them one spot, because these are kind of what helps control the motors. So if you rotate them all one spot and your problem moves to a different motor, you'll know that your driver is bad. And when you replace these, you want to make sure there's usually some sort of identifying mark on them, like these are white on one side and black on the other. You want to make sure you put those in the same orientation, because if you don't, you can actually short out this board and need to replace it anyway. I tried those, the problem's still there. I tried a different motor. I completely swapped out the motor with a new motor. The problem was still there. I was working with the Dremel company during this whole thing, trying to kind of figure out things on their end. And they thought maybe it was a power supply, so I tried a different power supply, and that didn't change the problem either. So then Dremel suggested getting this board changed out, and I actually got that straight from them. If you are looking for the extruder motor or the power supply or the little drivers like I was talking about, I will link those down below. Those are going to be Amazon links that give me a small percentage back. It's like 1.5% back, I think. So those do help out the channel quite a bit. So now that we're here, I'm going to pop the panel down. You want to be careful because there is this little, I think it's like a grounding strap on it. So you don't ever want to just pull this bottom off, because you'll rip the whole thing off. So here we can see we have the board. That's what we're going to want to change out. I'm going to take a picture first with showing all the different connections, just to be on the safe side, because you never know. Also, what I like to do is, instead of unplugging everything all at the same time, I like to unplug one connector at a time. You gotta be super careful with these connectors. But unplugging one connector at a time and moving them over like that, just because then you're not trying to put all of them back and remember where they go. Sometimes that works, not always. Here it might not work, just because we've got so many connectors in such a tight little space, so I might actually have to unplug all of them first, which I think I'm going to have to do because I don't want to leave this board just hanging here by a connector. So let me go ahead and unplug all these, and we'll get on to the next step after that. The last connector, or last two connectors, the last one is this green guy. And then we've got this little ribbon cable, got this little ribbon cable up here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually pull the board off first and then try to get that guy off, just because the way those open up, there's a little tab on there generally that opens up. I want to give myself a little bit more room. This here is the power supply that I told you guys that I tried changing out. And that's pretty easy if you guys ever need to do that. That's just screws where all the terminals are plugged in. Do the same kind of thing where you take a picture of it beforehand and then undo that, undo what's holding the power supply in, and go ahead and just swap them over. It's more time consuming than anything else. You want to hold the board because these ribbon cables are kind of fragile. Usually these, let's see how this one works. Usually they pop up or out. Looks like this guy slides out. So let me see. Yeah, okay. So there's this little tab here that just pops open to get that ribbon cable out. So it actually has a slightly different ribbon cable connector. You can see it's here on the bottom. So just push that down and lock it into place. So you want to slide the ribbon cable in there like that, and then lock it in. Kind of test it gently, make sure it's in there. And go ahead and put your board back in place. Put your 4 screws back in place. And tighten everything back down and reconnect all your cables. Tighten down the 4 screws, make sure not to go too tight because you can crack these motherboard type things. So go ahead and time lapse our putting all this back together and plugging everything back in. One thing to be careful of is not to get any of your wires stuck behind the board like I did. So okay, go ahead and undo this screw real quick and get out. Just something to be mindful of. And something else I was noticing as I was working on this is a lot of the plugs are actually color coded. You can see this one's red, and where it goes on the board is red. Just something to make it a little bit easier when you're putting it back together. Alright, now we're going to put the bottom back on and see if this works. Alright, turns on, that's a good sign. Now we're going to have to go through the filament loading process, which means we'll have to wait for it to heat up and we'll see what happens. Alright, next step is, here's where we have the problem. You would put the filament in. To get that focused, you would hit the load button and it would just click. Which it seems to still be doing the same problem. You see how it's not actually pulling the filament down any, and it's just kind of sitting there pulsing. So the next thing to check, which I'm not going to do in this video, but I'm going to have to go through and check all the wiring. That's what they said the other problem could be, is a loose wire or bad wiring somewhere. So I'm going to have to go through and check that. I don't know if I'll do a video on that or not, but we'll see. Alright, so like I said, that didn't actually fix our problem on this. Like I said, this is probably about the fourth thing I've tried. I changed out the motor's fine. Changed out the power supply is fine. I changed out the little drivers themselves, they're all fine. Obviously it's a new board now, so the board is fine. And the people I talked to at Dremel said it was most likely either the board or wiring. So they sent me out the board to see if that was a problem. That obviously isn't the problem. So now I'm going to have to go through, see if there's any loose connections, see if there's any frayed wires anywhere, anything like that. Like I said, I'll have everything, all those other parts linked below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you're not already. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye! It was working when I was moving this around. Oh, had it there for a second.